Hello and welcome to this video on supply. In this video, we're going to look at what is meant by the term supply, the factors that determine the level of supply, analyze the effects of a change in supply using a supply curve. So let's assume you own a stall that produces two goods, sandwiches or wraps. Currently, you produce 100 sandwiches and 100 wraps a day. You sell them at the market price of €2 per item. The cost of producing each item is €1.50. Due to the rising popularity of wraps, the market price for these items has increased to $2.30. What would you do with your stall? How would you respond to this price change? Well, what you might do when the price rises from 2 to 2.30 is try and sell more wraps. Perhaps you, instead of selling 100, you might be able to sell 120. And so what this tells us is the relationship between the market price and how many you'd be willing to sell. And we call this supply. Supply can be defined as the amount of goods or service that producers are willing and able to sell at any given price. And this is an important definition. Let's make sure that we have it down in our lovely notes. A supply curve is just a graphical representation of that relationship, as we've done here on the right hand side. So it shows us the difference between, or the relationship between price and the quantity that we're willing to sell. And you can see here that generally speaking, as the price of a product rises, we'd be more and more willing to supply as much as we can of that particular product. Whereas as price falls, the quantity supplied would decrease. A good way to remember this is that supply curves go up, supply to the sky. So as the price rises, the quantity supplied increases. Why is this? Well, a higher price signals higher profits to firms, creating an incentive to expand production. The relationship there between price and quantity supplied is therefore direct or positive. So in some circumstances, the supply of a product may be fixed. Perhaps you might want to pause the video and think why this might be. This might be because they've got perhaps a fixed capacity, e.g. a concert hall. And in that situation, the capacity, let's say, was 5,272 seats. It wouldn't be able to change. The capacity is fixed regardless of the price. If the price of tickets was to rise from 100 to 300, they wouldn't be able to sell any more seats. So our supply curve would look very vertical. So the supply curve shows the relationship between price and quantity supplied. Any change in price we can illustrate by a movement along the supply curve. So here the increase in price from P1 to P2 would move us along the supply curve, an expansion from A to B, and supply would increase from Q1 to Q2. So what might affect the level of supply that is not price? Well, these might be some ideas. And if there's a change in supply is caused by any of the factors above, the supply curve shifts. A rise in supply would be a shift to the right, less supply would be a shift to the left. Cost of production might influence the supply curve. If there's lower costs, firms might make higher profits, there's therefore an incentive to produce more. Higher costs with lower profits and an incentive to produce less. So if you imagine a bread manufacturer, when prices of wheat are low, costs are low, there's an incentive to produce more, and this might cause a shift in supply to the right. But when costs are high, this would reduce profits, a disincentive to produce more, and shift supply to the left. So here, an increase in the cost of making sandwiches would cause our supply curve to move to the left, S to S2. External shocks can also have an effect. So for example, changes in an exchange rate can affect cost to businesses and affect the supply curve. New technology can also affect. Fast, efficient machinery can lower the cost to businesses and therefore shift supply to the right. New innovative ideas that help the business become more efficient can also help increase production and shift supply to the right. Taxes also have an impact on supply curves. An indirect tax is a tax imposed by government when you spend money on a particular item. Examples include value-added tax and duties on things like tobacco and alcohol. These increase firms' costs, decrease profit, and therefore any increase in tax would shift the supply curve to the left. Subsidies are the opposite. This is where the government don't take money from businesses, but give money to businesses. And these are some examples. These would lower businesses' costs, increasing their profits and making them more likely to produce these products, increasing supply, shifting it to the right. So this would be an example here of a subsidy for wraps if we were a wrap maker. A subsidy would lower costs to the business and shift supply to the right. So here's this nice little summary of what might cause shifts to supply. Factors causing supply to increase are displayed here on the left-hand side. Factors causing supply to decrease are displayed on the right. It'd be worth print screening this, printing it out and sticking it into your notes. So in this video, we've looked at the term supply, the factors that determine the level of supply, and looked at the effect of a change in supply using a supply curve. That's it. Thanks for listening.